Yesterday, in our cover story on WION Pulse, we asked how long will the West continue to send arms to Ukraine? Tonight, let me tell you why this question is keeping Volodymyr Zelensky up at night. A new wave of assaults is looming large over Ukraine. The Russian president has already given his new commander his first task to take control of the Donbas region by March. But how do the Russian soldiers plan on doing that? The Donbas region is basically the eastern flank of Ukraine. There is no guarantee that the attacks will only be reserved for that area. Vladimir Putin declared that there is no doubt Russia will win this war. Experts are calling this Russia's spring assault. In the past few months, Russia has not been able to make any major breakthrough. But Ukraine is not naive to sit and wait. It has begun preparing. It is looking at its Western partners. And the weapon of interest is the Leopard 2 tank. So far, Ukraine has primarily relied on Soviet-era T-72 tanks. But this could be a game-changer for Kyiv. Germany's Leopard 2 tank is seen as one of West's best tanks. It weighs more than 60 tons, has a 120mm smooth-bore gun, and can hit targets at a distance of up to 5 kilometers. But Berlin has not shown the green light yet. The British Defence Secretary is in Estonia right now to make a final attempt to convince Germany. The meeting is being called the Leopard Coalition. There is pressure from Kyiv and there is pressure from fellow European capitals. It remains to be seen if Chancellor Olaf Scholz budges after all. These battle tanks are a significant step up in support provided by the West. Even the NATO chief agrees that there needs to be a significant boost in arms for Ukraine. And that is the only way a peaceful solution could be negotiated.
This may be a pivotal moment in the war, and we need to understand that most likely this war will end at the negotiating table. Nobody knows exactly how the war will end, but most likely around negotiations or around the negotiating table. But what we do know is that the outcome of those negotiations will be totally dependent on the strength on the battlefield. If we want Ukraine to prevail as an independent sovereign nation and a peaceful negotiated solution, more support for Ukraine is the way to peace, to a negotiated peace.
Jens Stoltenberg is calling it a pivotal moment. So the West is left with a small window to negotiate, agree and send arms package to Kyiv. While time is running out, Russia is busy holding military drills with its all-weather ally Belarus. Despite a number of military defeats, the president seems confident with his plan. Today he visited his native St. Petersburg. It's the 80th anniversary of Soviet forces breaking the siege of Leningrad. He took the opportunity to praise his defense industry and then defend his goals in Ukraine. Meanwhile, his foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, was busy making headlines, slamming the West. The high-level official likened the group's policies to Nazi leader Adolf Hitler's. He said, and I quote, "Just as Hitler mobilized and captured the majority of European countries and sent them against the Soviet Union, now the United States has organized a coalition against Russia." It has been 11 months since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The invasion quickly turned into a war when Ukraine stepped up. Until today, the country has held its doors because of help from the West. Today, Kyiv is hopeful that the same backing will help defend itself from Russia's next assaults. For more on this, we are now joined by Maximilian Hess, a Russia-Ukraine analyst and an author. He joins us live from London. Thank you so much for speaking to WION. Now, NATO says it's important to continue supporting Ukraine as battlefield strength will pave the way for negotiated peace. Do you agree with this? Because we are now 11 months into the war and there are really no clear signs from either side that they're willing to actually return to negotiations.
Thank you for having me. I certainly agree with those comments. I think there are two key points that underline it. First, you had mentioned that that Vladimir Putin has now announced that his goal is to take all of the Donbass by March. This, even if he were somehow successful in that, which there's no indication that he will be, this would be a Pyrrhic victory at best. Recall that when he first launched this wanton attack back in February of last year, vastly escalating the conflict he'd already been stoking for almost a decade, his goals were to take not only all of the Donbass, but to take all of Ukraine east of the Dnieper River up to the capital of Kyiv. And then back in September, he, of course, claimed that he was annexing territories that he didn't control in the Donbass as well as in the south, in the Zaporizhia and in the Kherson regions. Secondly, in terms of Western support, I think that it is crucial that Ukraine continue to get these supplies and then to get more supplies, because there's just a frank recognition that the longer Russia's attacks go on, the more Ukraine's stockpile of its Soviet weapons will be depleted, the more international stockpiles of relevant ammunition will be depleted, and it will eventually have to switch over to NATO standard weaponry to defend itself anyway. So I think that there's a clear sign that Putin's aims are not only unrealistic, but are decreasing as Ukraine mounts its defense. And secondly, a frank reality that Ukraine needs these to continue that defense.
All right. There is no doubt that Ukraine needs continued help from NATO. But the question really is, how much longer do you think Kyiv's Western allies will be able to continue providing this kind of support? Also, Moscow's charge is that weapons that are being provided by the West are only adding fuel to the fire and prolonging the war.
I think that Putin's charge is frankly nonsense. The war would end immediately if Russia withdrew troops back within its own borders. Ukraine has no intention and has shown no intention of attacking Russia proper. It didn't before the war. Despite Putin's vast attacks on its civilian population, it shows no intention of doing that and has even acted with restraint along the Russian border areas so as to limit the potential for further escalation. So I think that that point from the Kremlin's talking heads is frankly complete nonsense. In terms of sort of Western support, there are threats to the Western coalition from within, both from the populist wing of the Republican Party in the United States, as well as from some far left and far right populist parties in Europe. But broadly, support for Ukraine remains very high across Europe, across the United States, and in particular in other Eastern European countries that see that if Russia is successful in its attacks against Ukraine, worry that they may come next. So I don't see sort of the risk of a splintering Western support anytime soon. The fact that the Republican Party in the U.S. didn't do particularly well in the November elections helps that, certainly.
All right. Final question. Do you think the heavy weaponry that's been promised by the West is going to help Ukraine sustain the momentum in the battlefield and eventually change the tide of the war? In fact, the NATO chief has said that this is a pivotal moment in the war. Why do you think that is?
I think his points are that Ukraine wants to really demonstrate that its counterattacks and its successes from last summer and fall weren't limited, and it's able to continue to push forward with those and to push Russia back at least to the lines at the beginning of this round of the conflict on the 24th of February last year. Ukraine has had successful counteroffensives in Kyiv, in Kherson in particular. It wants to show that it can continue to push ahead with those and to force Russia to recognize that Putin's dreams and fantasies of annexing Ukrainian territory and wiping off the Ukrainian nation are nothing more than the insane dreams of a madman, and that it has to negotiate for peace.
The insane dreams of a madman. Interestingly put. Maximilian Hers, thank you for speaking to WION.
Thank you for having me.